Yeah, see? Don't tell you.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. As usual, we record this meeting and it's available from Mary at the town office and also Mr. Kevin Zung's recording tonight. First order of business is minutes from the last meeting.
Scheduled issues, fourth line down, it changed governess to governance. And then the next to last line where it says get a plan, I would say implement instead of get. And I move to approve with changes.
All those in favor or any discussion? All those in favor? Right. First item up for business tonight is our annual tax classification hearing. I see we have the assessors with us tonight, so. Harold, do you want to kind of give us an overview of what's going on here? Sure. From there.
I'll hand out a little document for you. And, wish I brought more copies, but the Board of Assessors has reviewed this handout. And where would you like me to sit where I was, or stand, or what's your pleasure?
You can, I don't know, if you want to go over here by Charlie, maybe we can.
Okay.
Okay, you want my chair and I'll go sit in the back?
Why don't you come sit here, and then you can kind
No, I
of
don't do.
talk to the group, and I'll go sit over by Rob. Does that work for you? Is that easier?
Sure. Thank you very much. And I promise to give you your chair back in a second. So, I'm here along with the Board of Assessors, and I believe you know your Board of Assessors. I wanted to also introduce Jeff Reynolds. He's my colleague, signed to Egremont, and he'll be a regular presence here. Jeff comes to us from the Bureau of Local Assessment, BOR, and so it's been in the appraisal business for something like 25 years, but then
Not quite.
not quite, but
Getting there.
okay, and along with that, some number of years with the Department of Revenue. So I think we're well served to have Jeff on board. So, as you know, having gone through this drill in the past, we have an annual tax classification hearing. Normally we would hold that sometime early in December, but as you no doubt heard, we developed a computer virus that essentially trashed our main assessment computer. It took some time to get that disk drive restored, the data on that, and once that data was restored, we then had to prove up with the Department of Revenue all of our tax records and assessment records to make sure that that when we're ready to go out to bill, that the values that they have certified agree with what's in our system. So here we are, a little after the normal time when we would hold a classification hearing. Classification hearing has one main purpose, and that is to determine whether the town of Egremont levies a single tax rate across all classes of property, or alternatively adopts a split rate in which the commercial and industrial property owners are taxed at a higher rate than residential property owners. For all the reasons I've explained in the past, it really doesn't make sense in a town like Egremont, where you have a very small commercial tax base, to go with a split rate. You would have to significantly increase commercial taxes to yield a very, very modest reduction on the residential side. In fact, it's about almost a 20-to-1 differential. You have to raise commercial the commercial tax rate 20% to yield a 1% reduction on the residential most of the commercial properties in town are of the mom and pop variety. We don't have any large industrial concerns or regional shopping centers or anything like that, where a split rate would make sense. I polled the Board of Assessors earlier. They are recommending to you the adoption of a single tax rate. And that tax rate, if approved by the Department of Revenue, is the next step in the process. If we successfully conclude this hearing tonight, we'll have a likely residential tax rate of $8.26 per thousand. That in combination with valuations that on the residential side are probably coming down a little bit. Remember, we don't talk current value. Assessments are based on historic value. Sales transactions that took place during calendar year 2011, 2012 formed the basis for our value decisions. We were still very much in a down market, so we have, as Board of Assessors, working with the Board of Assessors, reduced most residential values about 2 to 3%. We've got a bit of a higher tax rate, but in combination with lower residential values, you should see very modest increases in residential tax rates. I do want to say, however, that through this revaluation that we've gone through, and really for the last several years, we've seen that certain high-end properties have tended to come in undervalued. Whenever we get a sale that comes through the office, those values have tended to be low. So we've ended up raising the values of the higher-end residential properties. We realize that we'll get a little blowback on that through the abatement process. Yet the purpose of a revaluation is to try to eliminate or reduce any biases in our assessments. And so we are really compelled through the revaluation process to raise those higher-end residential assessments. So I mention that only because you as selectmen may get a call or two when the fourth quarter bills go out. Of course, we don't expect you to respond to those folks beyond your comfort. That's sort of the role for the assessors, and we working, Jeff and I working with the Board of Assessors to respond to that. So, I don't know if you have any questions relating to the document that I've put before you. Again, we're recommending a single tax rate. I offer even a motion on the last page at the top. There's a motion, should you choose to adopt a single tax rate.
Just my first question was, we're talking about lower values on some property. We have higher end value houses in town, and we have a lot of mid-value houses in town. We have a lot of those mid-value houses in town are on mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
Many of those people with those mortgages pay into escrow accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking here at a 37-cent difference in the tax rate. But more importantly to me is, has anybody done any analysis on the impact that it's going to have on the average homeowner?
Yeah, I think that's actually shown on the bottom of the fourth page. And I want to qualify, you'll see at the bottom of that page, tax impacts, and we list the several major classes of property. Single-family homes, we're showing a net change of $128 to the average residential tax bill. A little deceiving because of what I just described to you, that average is actually lifted up a bit because of the higher end, the increasing of higher end values. I think what you'll find is that the average residential increase will be something less than that 128, and probably something more in keeping with $50 to $70 for the year.
The worst thing is it's gonna impact everybody in one bill, isn't it?
That is a challenge with our quarterly billing system, and what transpired here with the need to send out third quarter estimated bills. The entire increase for the year will be borne on the fourth quarter. What I caution taxpayers about is you need to realize that when your July bill comes out, your tax payment amount will drop again, because that first quarter payment is based on 1/4 of the prior year's tax. So there's a one-time blip to pay the increase for the year, but then it'll settle back down again.
But
Yes.
that does impact people's escrow analysis.
It does.
Because, and that's what bothers me, is that we're doing this late, and we're doing it with a change, and you have people out there that are paying mortgages that are on a budget, and while we're saying annually it's maybe $128 difference, when a bank sees a change in escrow, they usually redo the escrow analysis, and it's 3 years before that thing levels out again.
My experience is that when the escrow departments recompute the tax, that they're looking at the year-to-year increase, not an isolated single payment.
I haven't seen that.
I will often have discussions with escrow departments where they have a situation where they're trying to figure out what to project for a tax escrow, and in every case that I've been involved in, they've always based it on a total year tax picture. Not to say somebody out there couldn't do what you suggested, but
Based on what you're projecting though, there's very minor, should I say, increase this year, even though the dollar or the tax rate goes up significantly. It looks to me like your homeowner is not going up only about a couple dollars, maybe $5.
what constitutes a small or a big tax increase, I guess, is in the eyes of the beholder. In my view, the increase for most property owners will be relatively small.
Does anybody in the audience have questions?
How much? You say small, how much?
Well, like I said here, for the average residential property owner, probably something in the $50 to $75 range on average
For the year.
for the year.
For the year.
For the year.
But you say on the upper class or the upper,
Could be some big increases,
as to how much?
highly variable.
Highly variable.
Yeah, I think you could see some $1,000 increases
$1,000.
on the high end.
Is this done by state or is this done by Egremont?
Well, all of the guidelines and policies that we follow are promulgated by the Department of Revenue, and they're followed by us in the work that we do.
So is this money going to the town or is it?
Goes to the town,
It goes to the town?
goes to the town.
And I think I need to point out that because of our computer glitch, the DOR reviewed a lot of the property values very carefully this year because of all our computer issues, so. It isn't something like we can choose a number and nobody looks at it. It's actually checked and double checked, and there's a lot of work goes into it, so.
So we're late, we're gonna have a big tax bill for a lot of people for the fourth quarter. what's the plan to ensure this doesn't happen again?
Well, the first thing that we've looked at is to make sure that we have a good backup process, and actually redundant secondary, tertiary backups. One of the complicating issues that we had was that we thought that we had some good backups. In fact, the backups that were done proved to be essentially empty files or corrupt files. So we were fortunately able to send out the disk to a company that specialized in retrieving data off of disks, and we were able to restore the file. So it really comes down to making sure that we have a good system in place for not only frequently backing up the system, but hopefully at some point checking those backups to make sure that we have good, clean backups.
Did we start early enough? I mean, this process should start on the 1st of July, is my understanding. That's the entire process.
The certification process started in July. We started that process timely. We had some staffing changes, DOR staffing changes that resulted in a shift of personnel on the Bureau of Local Assessment level. Our certification we have a new certification advisor that was assigned to Agrimont late in the process. So even though all of our work was submitted back in July, we were actually still slated for a timely certification. We received that timely certification back in October, which would, under normal circumstances, be plenty of time. But then we developed this computer disk issue, which at a very inconvenient time, really, when we were starting the process of setting our tax rate. And so on our end, the work was submitted early.
Technology-wise, is it your plan to put all this on the server, the town server?
If the town has a server and I would be delighted by a client server setup.
I thought that was our plan.
Girl, I'd like it done as soon as possible.
There's been problems.
We get the server. But let's get back to the tax classification.
Is there anybody with any other questions about the tax rate setting structure? Do you want to make a motion?
Okay. Guess that would be me. I move that the Egremont Board of Selectmen vote in accordance with MGL Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended, the percentage of local tax levy which will be borne by each class of real and personal property relative to setting the fiscal year 2014 tax rates, and set the residential factor at 1.0 with a corresponding CIP shift of 1.0 pending approval of the town's annual tax recap by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue.
Second.
Explain CIP shift.
Commercial, industrial, personal property.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.